probably one of my favorite systems that I got into late in the game. Commodore 64. Now I have an old one that's been sitting in storage for a long time, a bread box, discolored. And it actually works, it just does not work very good. The keyboard is really, the keys were never responsive, but I should have taken better care of this. It'll probably still work, it just, like I said, does not work very good. But this was my favorite, the second version, the 64C. I thought it looked cooler, and I guess the keyboard layout and all is pretty similar. And I'm blocking my own light, but there we go. It's a little discolored too, even though it's been in the box. I guess just over time, you get some discoloration in the plastic and stuff. So we seen, these systems, games and all at places, I guess, like Toys R Us, when we could not really afford these systems. And it was probably my most wanted system, that I couldn't have. This probably even, in terms of how many games and stuff was released on this probably beats out the Neo Geo or anything, really. And this was a competitor to the NES before, Nintendo kind of won the gaming wars. Even though this is a computer and not a console, a lot of people got this for gaming. We used to find a lot of the VIC-20s at yard sales and stuff, $5, $10. Tape drives, a handful of cartridges, game cartridges, maybe like the Scott Adams Adventure and Lemonade Stand and stuff like that. But yeah, most of the stores had generally stopped selling the Commodore 64 and the software, like retail stores, before we got our system. So, it was probably a few years after that when we got a chance to get a nice used system with a good collection of games. We had the floppy drive, probably around 300 to 400 games. Yeah. As far as original games, probably 200, and probably 100 of those were boxed. A lot of the SSI stuff, some of the Ultima games, and we bought, a few games elsewhere, at flea markets. I think I had Quest for the Avatar and stuff like that we bought separate. Maybe Double Dragon. Maybe 10 years ago, we stopped seeing these show up on most thrift stores and stuff. You could find like disc drives or especially like the bread box here at thrift stores and stuff, $5, $10. Most of the time the disc drives didn't work, and then they kind of ran out of stock, I guess, and now they're collector's items. Even a working power supply is pretty expensive because this used like a dual voltage power supply. They should not have ever did it. They should have had something that would have been easily replaceable. But nowadays, it's probably, because of capacitors and stuff going bad, it's probably better to get a third-party power supply that will handle these guys. And they're not going to be super cheap, because I think I bought one about 10 or 12 years ago. So in Europe, I think the cassette drive was probably more popular than the disc drive because of prices and stuff. But, most people, I would say, that had a Commodore had both. They had cartridges, so you could get, like Atari-style games. And of course, this is an easy flash cart, so all your cartridges and stuff, you can actually load onto this easy flash cart. This is a modern day flash card. And your disk drive is now, this cool looking thing. I think I got this from like Holland or some other European country. I'm not sure where. It took a long time to get here. It uses, an SD card here. Let's see if I can do this on camera if I'm following. Yeah, so you got your SD card, which is kind of like the old style floppies. And they kind of put it in a place where it looks like you're loading a floppy drive. So it's kind of made to look like a miniature version of the floppy. In the olden days, you might have used like a modem to do your BBS stuff or whatever. I do not know if this is a 1200 or 300 baud modem. This isn't the first style modem. The first style modems had a dock where you put your old, you know, what do you call it? Ring, rotary dial phone. You dial the number, ding, 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 ding. Put your phone on the set, you know, in a certain way so that the speaker is going into one section and the microphone is going to another. And you did your online stuff that way. But this was an auto dial one. Of course, all modems nowadays are auto dial, if there are any dial-up BBSs or anything anymore. However, with more modern stuff, we could get like a terminal server, terminal emulator, and you hook this, you know, in the serial port of the Commodore, and you use the internet. So you use like the AT whatever command, I forget what it was, it's been a while. And instead of putting the phone number, AT whatever, you know, 352, you know, whatever, you just put the IP address or whatever in there. So, and it'll convert, you know, your modem to Telenet, you know. So you can Telenet into bulletin boards or maybe Linux servers or whatever. My school, my elementary school, had Commodore 64s as their main computers. Yeah, some schools went with Apple IIs, and our school, I think, had one Apple II and one certain classroom. And who knows, the teacher might have bought that for themselves, you know, because she thought that it was a better, you know, learning, you know, edutainment system or something. I'm not sure. But every classroom had one of these in it. And the media library also had several others. So sometimes if they were doing, you know, some of the kids were really struggling with math or something, they would bring 2 or 3 of them in one classroom and have them take, you know, 15-minute turns or whatever. And then they would, it's mostly edutainment stuff they had, but they had a few games. And I always thought it was cool because some teachers would use games as a reward for, you know, doing something good, you know, being better academically, you know, making some kind of progress or improvement, you know, in the classroom. So I always thought that was kind of a good idea, kind of even cool. Into middle school, a few of our classrooms had a Commodore. So I'm going to tell you a story. You know, a lot of things that I talk about with games, I'm not really telling you the story of the game. I'm not really generally giving you gameplay videos, but there is a reason, a story behind a lot of things. So I was in middle school, and I guess we got into a yard sale, and a guy was like this major C64 enthusiast. He was in all these groups, he was saying, you know, clubs, you know, and he had hundreds and hundreds of copied discs, games and stuff, but it was popular back then. One of them was like some kind of X-rated game, and yeah, you do the deed on the game, you know, of course the graphics weren't that great or anything. So I made copies of that game, and I took them to middle school, and I gave them to other people and dared them to actually load those games, you know, whether in front of the class or, you know, kind of trying to hide it and just going in there and have those games played. So, yeah, I guess that was a little devious. I'm not sure how many people, if any of them, actually did it, because, you know, you probably would have gotten in major trouble. Now, here are probably some major reasons why I like the Commodore 64. The gold box games, you know, SSI, and there are other ones that had RPGs and stuff, but, you know, Pool of Radiance was like, I guess, the first one in the series. And they had like a Buck Rogers one that used a similar engine. You know, gaming and combat engine, Dragon Strike, Curse of Azure Bonds. There was like 2 of the 3 Kryn games. Hills Far, you know, this was completely different. It's not really an RPG, I don't guess. Never beat it, I'm not sure why. Dragons of Flame, again, it's kind of a short game. I played this one all the way through, I believe, on the NES. But a lot of these strategy simulations, RPGs and stuff were on the Commodore 64. A lot of them were released on IBM PC, some were released on the Mac. You know, I played Death Knights of Kryn, or Dark Queen of Kryn, on the Mac Plus, which is, you know, because they didn't have that one on the Commodore. And then the Amiga had some, then probably the Atari 600, 800 series. Apple II had a few of them. Dragon Strike was a cool one because it was like a shooter, you know, I guess it's the only kind of shooter where you fly around on a dragon and do combat, you know, as far as a Dungeons and Dragon game. You know, that's definitely different. And this is part of the Kryn world. I wish I could show you guys all kinds of box games, but I really don't have too many for the Commodore 64 anymore. I got rid of my collection, which was one of the stupidest moves as far as getting rid of video game systems or computer systems, because I love the system. You know, I do regret it. I do have some freaking Amiga games that are a gold box, but so far I haven't been able to find where I put them. They could be in a box anywhere. And they had, like I said, some of the similar or the same games that were ported to multiple, I guess, some video game consoles and multiple computer systems. I do have a brand new sealed copy of War of the Lance, I believe it is. Don't know where that's at either. It's somewhere. We're going to probably redo the home theater edition, you know, try to organize all the games and systems a little bit better later. And we'll probably have a lot more videos about my collection and all that good stuff. But this War of the Lance is a game that only comes on the market every few years, so it's hard to determine the value of it. You know, I am at last guess it was somewhere around 600, but you know, there's always a chance a copy will come out that sells for 250 or 500 or 550. And it was kind of an investment, you know, and we talk about kind of on this channel, are we collecting versus gamers, but not many people are going to open a brand new sealed copy of War of the Lance and make it go from potentially $600 value to maybe $100 value or less. So I don't think there's an argument to be had there. But the Commodore 64 was so much more than that. I mean, of course you could do your office stuff. You had printing stuff and, you know, anything you could do with any other computer, you know. Print master and all those things that people were obsessed with, you know, printing out birthday cards and stuff like that. And obviously business stuff, probably tax stuff. You know, what's weird is when I sold my my TI-99 4A Texas Instrument, or at least one of the systems with the peripheral expansion box, the PEB, it was bankers, two old ladies that I guess own a bank. They bought it for the purpose of doing their banking on the computer. I don't even know if the TI-99 had the stuff to do all that. The Commodore 64 almost definitely would have had, you know, that kind of stuff. But gaming-wise, you know, you had the, like I said, the cartridges. You had, like, the Atari licensed games. You had all kinds of stuff. Probably Pitfall and Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Joust. I don't know if Miner 2049er was on here, but Popeye most likely, Centipede, maybe Missile Command. But you also had hundreds and hundreds of disc and tape, you know, cassette drive games. Commando was one that I really liked, and I played Commando on the Commodore. I played it on the Atari 2600. I think I played it on the 7800. I played it on the arcade and the Nintendo. So, you know, and it was a pretty good version. I really liked the version of Commando. And there's all kinds of other games, every genre you can think of. this was the system to have. This would have been better than the VIC-20. This would have been better than the TI-99-4A. Better than, I really like the Atari 600, 800. And they did have similar games, but there would have been just so much more on the Commodore 64 than the Atari computers. So as far as quantity and quality, the quality was similar to the Atari. Quantity and quality, though, together, this easily beats those systems out. And like I said, I love the Atari, computers. I had disk drives and, tons of games for them in the past. And unfortunately, I don't have one of them. I love the Tandy color computer. Again, there wasn't a quantity, at all with the Coco. This had the games. I was able to find a photo of my Amiga collection. And a lot of these, not just the gold box games, but a lot of these were also on the Commodore 64. And my sealed copy of War of the Lance. As far as I know, it wasn't released in the market and was only a promo or demo copy only. I've never seen any sign of it actually being released. So it probably has a very limited amount of copies out there.